I know that the APC is a challenge and it can seem very daunting. So in this video, I'm going to share with you my tips to help you nail the APC and become a member of the R.I.C.S. Now, if you're visiting us for the first time today, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you do, please remember to hit the bell so when we release our next video, you'll get that notification. So let's get into it. Now, it may seem silly and obvious to include START as a tip on completing the APC, but the reason I've chosen to do so is that in my experience I've met so many people who wanted to be a member of the R.I.C.S. and they intended to start their APC but never got round to doing it. Now, in my experience I had to do 7 years of part-time education to get to a position where I could actually begin my APC, and for me it was a mindset thing. After all those years of studying and working, I knew that if I stopped and didn't start then, for me personally, I probably wouldn't have picked it back up. So my first tip to you is to actually start. So my next tip is to choose your APC route. The APC has 2 routes. One is structured training, which is a minimum period of 12 or 24 months, and the other one is a preliminary review. Now, you need to look at the requirements of each of the routes for the APC and decide which one is the most appropriate to you, considering your experience and your academic qualifications. Before you begin your APC, you will need to select a sector pathway. Now, my tip here is all around selecting the correct sector pathway for you. The R.I.C.S. has 22 sector pathways, and you may have experience in more than one. But you should choose the sector pathway that's most closely aligned to your area of expertise. Each sector pathway has a list of competency requirements, and you will be expected to meet those. So it would make sense for you to choose the sector pathway where you're best able to do this. It's a mandatory requirement of the APC that candidates select a counsellor. Now, a counsellor has to be a member of the R.I.C.S. or a fellow of the R.I.C.S. And my tip here is to give proper consideration to who you select to be your counsellor. I've met so many candidates in the past that have approached a counsellor and put them forward in their application, but haven't given it much consideration beyond that point. Now, with some candidates, their counsellor may not actually understand the pathway they're on, or they may not be up to date with the requirements of the APC, or they may not actually have the time to proactively engage with the candidate during the APC process. Now, I can't overstate the importance that a counsellor plays in the APC process, and candidates need to consider properly who this counsellor should be when they complete their application. It's so much more than just ticking a box and getting the mandatory requirement on that application form. So my next tip is to make a plan and work the plan. At the start of your APC, list out all the activities you will need to do, list out all the key milestones, list out the meetings you'll have with your supervisor, your counsellor, when you're going to start looking at your case study. Spread those activities over the planned duration of your APC and then stick to the plan. Once you've done the plan, don't put it in the drawer, use it as a tool to keep you on track. And I can tell you from experience that that plan will change. Life is going to get in the way of that plan. So will work, so will other things, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. But just update the plan and use it as a tool to keep you on track, and you'll get through your APC process. CPD. It's a mandatory requirement for all R.I.C.S. members that we undertake CPD, but for APC candidates, the requirements are a minimum of 48 hours for each 12-month period of their APC. Now, you may be surprised to learn about what actually qualifies as CPD, so make sure you check out the R.I.C.S. website to see examples of informal and formal CPD. Now, my advice here is to include your CPD on your APC plan, especially the formal CPD, as these may be organised events which you'll need to undertake during the course of your APC. So my next tip is to set the bait. But what do I mean by this? Well, when you're writing your competency statements and your case study, don't give everything away. I need to be really clear here and say that it needs to be a strong enough submission to give you a solid foundation before you go into your final assessment, but that doesn't mean to say you need to include everything in your case study and everything in your competency statements. The assessors, before they meet you, have only got your submission. and they need to draft their questions based on your submission, and that includes your competency statements and your case study. But if you write those statements and case study in such a way that it naturally provokes a question, that gives you an element of control before you go into the final assessment. Now, I can tell you, beyond the first 10 minutes of that final assessment, you lose control and it's over to the assessors. But you can help yourself by leaving out little subtleties or key pieces of information that don't necessarily weaken your submission, but naturally provoke a question. So that's a little tip for you. When you're writing about your competencies or your case study, I know you'll be reviewing those things as you go. But the disadvantage for you is that you've got all the knowledge and experience around those things, so when you read them, you may not spot gaps or errors in what you've written because you might be subconsciously filling in those gaps with the knowledge you've already got. Now, with the assessors, they won't have all of that. So if you've written something in such a way that doesn't make sense to anybody other than you, which may not be deliberate and may not be apparent to you, you may miss this, and this could potentially weaken your submission. So my advice here is to get your work reviewed by others, by your supervisor, by your counsellor, by your peers, by somebody else. It could be your mum or your sister or your brother or your dad. It just needs to be somebody else other than you, so when they read it, it makes sense, because you may not spot those things on your own. So my last tip for the APC is to watch our video about the final assessment interview, which you can view by clicking the link in the top corner of the screen. Now, if you found this video helpful and it's given you some tips about completing the APC process, please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, please remember to click the bell so when we release our next video, you'll get that notification. Thank you for watching. It's been great to have you. This has been Construct Academy.